coverage here at Grand Prix Atlanta. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Ben Seck. And we've got, well, another Ben. We've got Ben Stark down in the feature match area. He's playing against Brennan DeCandio.
It does.
Looks like our players are ready to rumble. We've got Big Red, so a modified version of the mono red deck in the hands of Ben Stark, and Esper Godpharaoh's Gift for Brennan. So two very different takes on the format, and two modifications of decks that we've seen have success even as recently as the last Pro Tour.
Yeah, so Ben is playing, a deck that people are pretty familiar with, but the changes he's made have really kind of like made it better against his expected metagame. So he's gone a little bigger. He's playing cards like Sand Strangler and Glorybringer main deck. He's not playing most of the haste creatures like Ironcrop Crusher and Earthshaker Kenra, and he's only playing one copy of Hazoret the Fervent, which is, kind of almost heresy in red players' eyes.
I find it mildly offensive.
Really?
It's such a great card. The card's just dominated standard.
The thing is, he slowed down his deck a little bit, and so it's harder for him to empty his hand.
Look, I might forgive him one day, but for now...
Look, he's 6-1.
Also, it doesn't look like a slowed down version of the deck right now. He's just gone one drop into one drop.
Yeah, so the Esper version of the deck can disrupt the opponent a little bit more. It's got things like Hostage Taker and what we see, a Kite Sail Freebooter.
Freebooter, though, is not going to get to stick around to actually take anything away.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get killed by Magma Spray.
Yep. And so it's just checking.
He's reading, but it's still just two either way.
Well, I think he's trying to figure out if it's actually removed from the game because it actually dies via
You're right.
-1/-1 damage, which means that it might actually negate the...
It doesn't. Yeah, it just actually goes to the graveyard.
Yeah. I think they have to just check which of the replacement effects happened first.
This is definitely firmly in judge territory here.
Yeah, it's really important, actually. It can the reason why it really matters is Godpharaoh's Gift. Obviously, he wants as many creatures in the graveyard, and especially because usually the Esper version of the deck runs Gate to the Afterlife.
It looks like it may have been exiled there on that ruling.
Yeah, it looks like it.
And like you said, that can absolutely matter.
Yeah, I think it's actually pretty big. So, even though Ben only has one Hazoret in his deck, he has it in his hand, and that's all you need, really. You don't want a second one. When you draw like that, do you actually need to build it like
Well, you just throw the other one at their face if you draw it, right?
Brennan looks like he has a Gate to the Afterlife.
Kind of interesting if that card is exile. My understanding was that it would not be.
Yeah.
Also, there's a chance that Brennan's graveyard is just sideways. He just does that.
Yeah, no.
There's our players that do that as well, and it's just not exiled. So
we'll have to look at his next card that goes to the graveyard. So
yeah.
Obviously, Ben casts his Hazoret as soon as he can and has only one card in his hand. So
this has just been an absolute thumping here by Ben Stark.
Yeah, there's no creatures in the graveyard, or maybe one for Brennan, and so that gate is far from being able to activate.
Yeah, even if the freebooter is just sitting in the graveyard, it's way too late for that. He drew a Walking Ballista for the turn, which isn't, sort of a hidden way that he has to get creatures into the graveyard.
Mm-hmm. We'll need to get some life totals updated because it looks like I think Brennan's taken more than 4 damage this game so far.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he took 7 last turn.
Playing a Walking Ballista, pinging down the courier while Ben didn't actually have any red to activate it and kind of cash in those early cards. I would really say that, Ben's got to be a big favorite for this game. It's kind of obvious because he has everything he needs. He has a Hazoret, he has one Ramunap Ruins, he's got another Desert to sack, and Brennan is very, very far away from, having a relevant kind of card, like a Gate to the Afterlife or Godpharaoh's Gift. So Ben played a Ferocidon, then attacked.
Yeah, I still don't think Brandon's at 16.
Okay, he's a 4
Okay,
now.
well, 2 turns later.
It's much lower, and I would say that Brennan is very, very much in trouble here. Just everything he might do is not going to help. Like if he plays another creature, the Ferocidon basically hits him for 1, and then all he needs is a Ruins. So Brennan packs it in.
So, by the way, just going back to that Magma Spray thing, I had a little consulted with my friends in chat. So Magma Spray says it deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead, right?
Yep.
Which we know, but there's a similar card that was seen a lot of play in Standard called Incendiary Flow that says it deals 3 damage to target creature or player. If a creature dealt damage this way would die, exile it instead.
Yep.
Which is a little bit different, and that was the card that actually was where that would have happened the way that we thought. But Magma Spray, it doesn't have to. The damage doesn't have to come from it. So
Got it.
It does get exiled. Thank you, Chad. Good looking out.
Thank you. So, Ben Stark, a member of the Hall of Fame. Oh, we have a live look into a surprising Corey Baumeister at 7-0.
Yeah, you're surprised by that?
No, not at all.
I'm not surprised by it either. Abigail Coulter on the other side, also sitting at 7-0. Sultai Energy versus Temur Energy here, it looks like.
Yeah, so Sultai Energy doing really well at the Pro Tour, obviously in the hands of Seth Manfield.
It looks like we're actually came in the middle of a judge call here, TBS.
Yeah.
A little bit unfortunate timing for us. Yeah, so apparently what's happening here is there is a discrepancy about how much energy Abigail had available because she writes it on her life pad rather than using a die on the energy counter, and perhaps Corey was unclear about exactly how much she had, so they're getting that cleared up. So nothing to see here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is Abigail's second Grand Prix ever, so being 7-0 has got to feel pretty good.
Wow, that is impressive.
And Corey, this is probably his second millionth Grand Prix, and he's 7-0, and that's got to feel good too.
Yeah, indeed. So we'll let the judges sort that one out, and the players are just finishing sideboarding here. And what ended up being a very quick game one between Stark and DeCandio.
Yeah.
And not particularly close.
No.
Stark had one of the more aggressive draws for his deck. Look, his deck, we're calling it Big Red or Bigger Red. It's it still has the capability to deal a significant amount of damage. It's just cut down on the haste aspect of the deck, the sort of attack you, and has gained some ground in some other areas, and then has also added more lands and a bigger curve. Yep. So it is a tweaked version. Right.
And I think Ben often, he comes to tournaments having his deck ready for the expected metagame. So, Ben, part of the Hall of Fame, really kind of understands a lot of intricacies of matchups. And funnily enough, he's actually not known as a deck builder, but he's actually quite a good deck builder and a good deck tuner. So one of the more unappreciated skills of Ben Stark.
Oh, absolutely. He, especially, when it comes to the Pro Tour, most of his energy is focused on understanding limited and getting that out to the team. I mean, as far as his responsibilities within the team go. But when you're talking about a Grand Prix, the players don't get together in testing houses for Grand Prix. Yeah. They'll communicate online, maybe do a little bit of play testing if they live in the same area or maybe are roommates or whatever. But it's not to the same rigor that they'll go through for Pro Tour testing. And a lot of times the players are kind of on their own for that. Yeah. And Ben will spend a lot of time on Magic Online trying out a deck, running it through a few leagues, making some more changes, adding some cards, taking away some cards. And you'll often see him show up to Grand Prix specifically, not to Pro Tours, but to Grand Prix with very well-tuned and intricate takes on the format. He has his reasons for it too. It's not just random.
Yeah, no, I've actually been on a testing team with Bennis when I was playing with Channel Fireball, and Ben is so good at explaining himself, why he makes certain choices. He's very, very logical in how he approaches Magic, and he's very open to listening to other people. So it's I think one of the skills that is like unappreciated is the ability to listen as well as make points. It was also unfortunate that I was the second worst Bennis on the team.
Man, somebody in chat just said, "What's TBS?"
Well,
that is a beating.
It's a long story, but it does stand for the Bensec. I did not choose it, so just wanted to let people know that I wasn't trying to, puff myself up. It was actually a name that was given to me very, very early when I played Magic by some of the more senior players in Australian Magic at the time. And it was meant to be kind of like poking fun at me because I used to talk a lot online, but I didn't really have the results to back it up. So it was like the Bensec, but not really. It was kind of making fun of me.
Would you have preferred a Bensec?
No. I mean, I actually really liked it. I took it on as my own nickname, and, it's stuck. I mean, a lot of the Magic players who do know me, I mean, I've been playing since the beginning. I've opened some beta boosters myself, and, most of them call me TBS. They don't call me Ben. There's plenty of Bens in the Magic community, and so it gives me a little bit of a individual identity.
Ben might be taking a mulligan here. Is that what happened?
I think so, because Brennan's not really moving while Ben's shuffling, and it looks like
still on that judge call, by the way, on the other match.
Yeah. Okay. The good thing about the Ramunap red decks in general, obviously, they're pretty resilient to mulliganing because obviously if they have Hazoret, it kind of makes it easier to actually attack with Hazoret when you have one less card.
So that's why he's mulliganing?
No.
It was purely strategic in
absolutely.
that way? He may have brought in more Hazorets, you don't know.
It probably should, actually, and it's because you really want to try and put away the Esper deck before it has a chance to set up the Godfarer's Gift. The Ben this time does not have a 1-drop, so less fast start than he's used to. Brennan doing some exploring. I think in response to the Explore trigger, Ben shocked the creature, so it didn't have a chance to actually get to be 2/3. But he still gets the Explore trigger and can choose to put the card into the graveyard.
Main event, AM judges.
Brennan reading Dunes of the Dead, actually, and fair enough, because that's not a card you really see very often.
Yeah. Ben said he tried out a few different deserts in those spots with a few more land slots and needing to support them so that he could play the Sand Stranglers. He wanted to try out a bunch of deserts, and that was one of them. It hasn't really seen play that thus far in Standard, though.
Yeah, but he has actually 6 ways to sack that desert. So when it goes to the graveyard, it actually creates a 2/2 black zombie. And obviously Ramunap Ruins is one way of doing it, but also Scavenging Grounds, another way of sacking a desert.
Ragavan! Ooh, and Treasure Map. This is my favorite little piece of tech here that Ben has. I have no idea how good this card is in his deck, but I love that it's in there.
Basically, I think it allows Ben to
not flood.
Yeah, not flood. Also gives him a little bit more staying power by, having more cards. Obviously, is one of the things that allows you to stand more of a long game.
The funny part is that Ben, he's been playing this deck all day, right? We're all the way into round 8. And, I think a lot of the players that he's playing against just assumed, well, Ramunap Red, I know this deck. And, he even starts things off with some 1-drops. And you're like, yeah, okay, I've seen this before. But the turn when you play Treasure Map in game 1, you have been outed as a big red deck rather than the alternative, because there's no way that you're running Treasure Map in the regular version of Ramunap Red.
I think Treasure Map is one of those cards that I think is going to break even more in the future. I think it's underplayed right now. I think there's a lot of decks that could do with that kind of card, because it ramps you, also gives you a lot of card advantage.
Mm-hmm. It's also just sweet.
Especially when you have 5 mana creatures like Glorybringer, it's always good to get an extra land sometimes.
Please come to the customer service stage for a
Yeah, the pressure is really mounting here on Brennan DeCandio. Now he's facing down card advantage engines times 2, plus a powerful planeswalker that will deal damage to him.
Mm-hmm.
He's still taking a little bit of heat here from Karizev, though the Squire there doing a reasonable job of holding it back, but still not looking great for Brennan at this point. He just doesn't have a lot going on.
Yeah, no, he has 2 creatures in the graveyard, so he's a little far from Gate to the Afterlife. He has no way of breaking through to pressure Chandra right now, because Ben basically kept back his Karizev, which has 3 toughness, so can easily block this Seeker Squire.
Yeah, the thing is that Brennan is supposed to start off with Minister of Inquiries.
Yeah.
Right? He's supposed to play that and get that going. He's supposed to play Champion of Wits on turn 4 and just be dumping cards into his graveyard to help set up, and he hasn't been able to do it.
Oh. He didn't need a way of pressuring Chandra. He actually had a way of directly killing it.
Okay, so Vraska's Contempt, about the cleanest way you're going to get out of, Chandra jail here.
Yeah.
So that worked out pretty well for Brennan and gives him a ray of hope coming back, because the truth about Treasure Map is that it is slow.
Yep.
Right? It is not the type of card that lets you just immediately dominate the game.
Though
But
it's ready.
he has traced his finger along most of this map and is about to hit the jackpot.
And sometimes it actually gives you the option to use the treasure as, Lotus Petals. Allows you to cast some 2 spells on a turn, or a bigger spell, like Glorybringer.
Players in the 530 standard.
Ben taking a lot of damage with his own Ramunap Ruins.
Well worth it, though. He gets to cast another,
and
and he's going to actually go ahead and get this Treasure Map transformed now by making mana with Chandra.
Your pairings for round number 2 are
So that transforms.
Ben just making sure that he explains what he's doing.
Yep. I love the art on all these flip lands. They're just really, really cool.
You mean transform double-faced lands?
Yes. That was a mouthful. I just wanted to,
Yeah, but flip cards has already been taken.
It's true.
Did you know that?
I did not know that.
Those are from Kamigawa.
Oh.
Those are the ones that
you're right.
flip. Yeah, that's why us professionals in the booth say transform.
That's right.
It's more evocative, too, of what R&D was going for. At least that's what I was told.
I'm not quite the professional. I'm doing this pro bono, so.
That is not true. You are absolutely a professional. So now what happens from here, TBS?
Yeah, so I think,
Two cards in the yard for Brennan. He's got the Gate to the Afterlife on the battlefield. 3 treasure. Those are going to turn into cards very shortly here for Stark. It's not looking great.
No, I mean, look, it looks like the game's already gone into the late game. So, or at least the mid game. And, the Chandra really can take over that kind of game. Now, he's attacking with his Squire, which is kind of interesting because Karizev can easily block. So he's got to be thinking, what is Brennan got up his sleeve? It's probably something like about Ballista, and there it is. So able to do 1 damage. It's probably the only card in his deck that can do 1 damage like that. But still, Chandra is unscathed. So
Yep.
Having both the ability to get an extra card with 2 different ways. I mean, one with the Chandra Plus and one with the Treasure Cove. Ben can really put the screws to Brennan in this kind of mid game, because Brennan has no pressure right now, and he's still far off. He only has 2 creatures in the graveyard. He has 2 in play, but you need 6. That's a lot of creatures you need to get that gate going. So, and he doesn't have a card like Refurbish, like the blue-white decks, to power out a quick Godfarer's Gift, and so you have to do it the hard way. But as you said earlier, he didn't have a Minister of Inquiries, he didn't have a Champion of Wits, so it's really slow if you just have to use combat to get rid of all your creatures.
It is kind of interesting, though, because, the raw power level that Brendan brings to the table here could still overpower even a bunch of extra cards from Ben. We have seen that if Brennan gets lucky here and goes Champion of Wits, discard 2 creatures, kill my Walking Ballista, maybe have a creature die somehow. He can. Well, okay, let me just reverse all of that. But so this is a Braid hitting that gate to the afterlife, which is going to make life incredibly difficult for Brennan. But what I was going to say is, we have seen the ability for this deck to not only come back, but just crush in that late part of the game when it actually gets Godfarer's Gift going. Where even if Ben's drawn 4 or 5 extra cards, I could still see Brennan pulling this out. The problem, of course, is that if he doesn't ever get to that point because Ben drew those cards, well, it's moot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Brennan was considering actually sacking his Walking Ballista just prior when the Braid happened, because the ability of Gate to the Afterlife, there's something else in addition to the Godfarer's Gift. It actually allows you to loot once when a creature dies and gain a life, but that's not as important. It's pretty, I guess it's important against a red deck.
Sure.
But he may have thought, because I think he might have another gate in his hand, or maybe I think it's a Godfarer's Gift actually. But getting to 6 creatures may be what he needs to do.
So it looks like Ben is going to go ahead and use Dunes of the Dead in combination with Ramunap Ruins to make a zombie.
This is an interesting line that Ben's taking, because he's trying to get value by sacking his land, and it's interesting because he has Treasure Map, Treasure Cove. I don't know if he needs to be like getting rid of his land to push forward the game in his favor. It's like I think Brennan's still at 17. I'm not sure if we've updated that.
Well, Ben was doing that to try to block one of these creatures from hitting Chandra, so I think he was just trying to preserve his advantage. Oh, there you are, Minister of Inquiries. Where you been all my life? You're in the graveyard now.
But
the other thing that of course did for Ben was, if there is another gate to the afterlife for Brennan, he's setting back those 2 creatures that were there.
No, that's definitely true. Treasure Cove tends to make you want to have more lands because you're drawing more cards and you need to deploy a lot of the spells. That being said, Ben is a far better player than I, so I'm sure he's kind of considered that, and he knows what's important there.
I'm sure it was an interesting decision for him. It's just a matter of, he had a chance there to kind of surprise block. I don't know that Brennan was playing around it fully and force Brennan to either dump a bunch of mana into Ballista or just lose it. And also, of course, protect his Chandra, which can be important. And as you can see, Chandra is no longer long for this world, as Ben is just going to go ahead and use it to kill the Seeker Squad.
Yeah. So sort of what it allows him to do is to cast that Baumeister, get a chance at putting a card under there. Like if he's going to use his Ballista, he has to kill it. So I think that's a good play.
This is just insane. This is Ben's mono red deck, and he had 2 card advantage engine going, and now he's got another one. It's like he's able to reload his hand at will, and he's mono red. Thought the whole point was like count to 21. How many bolts do I have?
But I think that's the mark of a really good player, understanding what your match is about and crafting your strategy around that. I think Ben realizes that like a lot of these games can go long, so he needs to have his card advantage engines to really allow him to go toe-to-toe with Esper, which has things like Champion of Wits to give them more card quality.
Look at this, though. Another Walking Ballista here from Brennan, and he's actually let the Bowmat Courier live for now. He may draw step this.
Yeah. One
upkeep, draw.
Nope. May do it prior to attack then, but
You'd think he'd like to get that courier off the battlefield in
Yeah.
exchange for 1+1/+1 counter on the ballista.
I'm fast seeing that I think Ben needs to have like one of his biggest spells, and he might have one right now, a
What is
Glory
this?
Bringer.
Glory Bringer,
Yep.
yep.
He either needed a Glory Bringer or a Hazaret to really start coming back in this game, because his ground assault really can't do anything right now.
He's going to go ahead and exert it, and that's going to take down the Seeker Squire number 2 and leave Brennan with his walking ballistas. The shields are mostly down for Ben Stark, as if he wants to get rid of his courier, he'd actually have to use a treasure to do so, which is a costly.
Yeah, it's probably not worth
Probably
it.
not worth it.
No, it's only one card. I mean, the treasure is one card in of itself, so I don't think that would be the right way to go. He could also make his ballista bigger and then kill Glorybringer over a couple turns, and like, so he'd probably be left with one ballista with one counter on it.
Well, he's going to attack with this walking ballista.
I like this attack. Ben really doesn't have any good blocks. He's actually at 9, so the pressure makes a big difference. If he doesn't block, he can pump it, make it 3 damage. Ben will go to 6, and then he has 4 damage on the table, so it doesn't need to do that much to win.
Yeah, Ben actually pretty incentivized to block here, unless he feels like he can close out this game. Remember, Ben does want the game to go a little longer if possible. He still has 2 treasures waiting to be opened up there.
Yeah, no, I actually think Brennan has been able to
took
put
it.
Yeah, he's been able to put enough pressure that Ben, is kind of teetering on the edge of losing control of this game.
Yeah, absolutely. Those 2 copies of Walking Ballista getting really annoying here.
I like Brennan's kind of discipline in just keeping, like, not using the tokens on his Walking Ballista to, like, maybe kill the Baumeister courier, because now he's threatening actually just burning him out with Ballista tokens. Counters.
Well, it looks like Ben has drawn a land for the turn and played it, and is maybe considering getting in with the courier and just cashing it in.
I wonder if he's thinking of actually cashing in a treasure here, because
Well, he's definitely going to do that, right?
yeah, and he probably would do it like prior to the combat step, because he can maybe won't.
Well, it just gets awkward, because if the courier were to die, he'd have to discard it.
Yeah. So Ben waiting to see if Brennan actually responds to the trigger on Baumeister courier.
I think only 1 card left in hand for Stark, so
Yeah.
Brennan is certainly going to be concerned about letting him, like, let's just say it's a random land in hand for Ben, turning that into 2 spells. Not that that's guaranteed what would happen, and Brennan is going to, in fact, go for it. But as you said, this does take a little bit of the edge off of him being able to burn Ben out with these 2 walking ballistas.
Right.
Looks like Ben's just going to sack it for 1 card here, though. I'm curious what his last card is, because that's, of course, what's hinging on this entire decision. Oh, he's
Ooh.
going to cast a shock.
That's interesting. That's good, because
He's been content to just let the walking ballistas survive. He could have used Glorybringer to kill 1, Shock to kill another, but he's decided it's not what he wants to do. That's the exile, of course, kind of hanging around.
yeah, he'll never get that card.
No, don't even get to look at it.
You can at the end.
Yeah, not now, though.
Do you think you should look at it, or should just like?
You know what I think. All right, there's a treasure. They know what I think, too. Don't worry.
I want to know all the information. Maybe I could have changed if I ever get sent back in time.
You have a lot of faith in your ability to take that information and not misuse it. I have less faith in my own ability to do so.
I always peak when I mulligan.
Oh,
Always.
God.
100%.
Not you, too.
Yeah, look.
Gotta know, huh?
Yeah, no, I just consider it more value.
Rabbit hunter.
It's information value that I get for free.
And you think that all information is good.
Oh, yes.
You're so wrong.
Give it to me all.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're in a kind of an interesting situation. Glorybringer is obviously the biggest threat on the table, and Brennan really needs to find a way to deal with it or get his combo online. But he's pretty far off the combo. It looks like they might be waiting for a Oh, no. So Brennan decides to deploy the Scarab God, which, it's a good haymaker right now because the Glorybringer can't kill it. There's plenty of creatures in either graveyard. Well, at least one in Ben's and several in Brennan's. Ben doesn't really have that many cards that actually kill it with one card. So that's another thing. So the card is very, very resilient to most of the red decks. Now, in combination with the Glorybringer, he could probably use the Exert and a burn spell. Most burn spells will be able to kill that. But also, it's only temporary. So Exerting Glorybringer takes it out for an extra turn. Scarab God just goes back to his hand. He can replay it. So it's probably not something he wants to do, though he might have to do it because Scarab God's just a 5/5. And so can really actually start.
Yeah, so does the Glorybringer damage work with the Soulscar Mage damage here as well?
No, it's only for spells.
It's spell-based damage only? Okay.
Yeah. That would be cool, though.
Making it a 1/1. Is that just a Scarab at that point?
He just lost his deityhood. So one of the interesting... I think they're getting some sort of judge call. But I think the Scarab God is really, really important to maybe deal with because, the extra damage that you get from the scry.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's not... Sorry. I was mistaken, actually. Soulscar Mage actually just checks for non-combat damage, and Glorybringer is not actually combat damage. At least the Exert is.
That's right.
Okay.
So how big of a difference does that make here?
A pretty big difference.
I mean, he still would have a Scarab God with that activated ability, which is what usually wins you the game rather than the fact that it's 5/5.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's actually better for him that it doesn't go to the graveyard because he can replay it as a 5/5, but now it's only a 1/1 and it's fairly ineffectual at racing.
Well, Ben's going to play Rampaging Ferocidon off of Chandra and her plus ability. He's also left himself the Treasure plus Treasure Cove combo of drawing an extra card, though he's recognized that he's needed all this mana, and there's no point in drawing a card here.
Yeah, and he's kind of put Ben in the squeeze because if he chooses to use the Scarab God ability, a creature comes into play, will do 1 damage from the Ferocidon. They're basically at parity life total wise. So, and Ben is the player with the creature that has evasion.
It's a pretty good turn for Ben Stark.
Yeah.
Though you never feel good about passing the turn to your opponent who has an active Scarab God, even if it is a little tiny one.
Scarab Demigod.
There you go. Is that like a demi baguette?
I guess so.
Maybe I'm just hungry.
I could always do with a baguette.
Let's see what Brennan has lined up for us for this turn.
You're going to eat a lot of bread when you go to World Magic Cup.
Oh, yeah. I'm not going demi baguette. I'm going for the full thing.
Okay.
Looks like Ben left that treasure intact, in fact. I thought he may cash it in on end step there, but he didn't. Brennan just passed the turn back. He says, I've got 2 walking ballistas and an active Scarab God. Come at me, bro.
Yep. I think the card that he's probably looking to eternalize, or at least Scarab God ability, probably the Champion of Wits, because he will get to draw 4 and discard 2. I don't think there's any other really good target. I mean,
by the way, the chat does point out interesting interaction here that I missed on that last one was that Ben has Scavenger Grounds plus land plus treasure. So if Brennan were to go for it, he could force Ben to use up his treasure and not get the card out of it, but instead, blank that activation and use his Scavenger Grounds, with Ben, which would certainly do in that scenario.
Yeah,
and that's what the dynamic was between Brennan deciding whether he wanted to use it or not, and why Ben didn't use his.
Pretty interesting because
this is really cool because now Ben just used Chandra to kill the Scarab God, and now he can go for Scavenger Grounds.
Yeah,
and he'll get the Scarab God along with any potential food that it may have had.
So he's left the...
Oh, and a replacement Chandra here as well.
That was why he was so willing to sacrifice it essentially to kill a Scarab God. Scavenging grounds really, really hurting Brennan. This one activation is going to be pretty brutal for him. I mean, I go as far to say as I think it's possible that Brennan might die next turn because he'll lose the Scarab God. He'll be hit with the Glorybringer. Probably gets Chandra this turn and the next turn. So it's unless Brennan has a way of actually kind of killing either the Glorybringer or the Chandra next turn, he's Ben has 8 damage. Oh no, but Ben decides to actually minus Chandra.
He's getting aggressive.
Yeah, which is kind of interesting because now he's basically putting Brennan to the test. Do you want to ping Chandra, giving you one less blocker, and when you have one less blocker, you can't block the menace on. Right. So now,
this gets really interesting because Brennan declined to use the Scarab God in response to Chandra damaging it.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Right, which would force Ben Stark to use his scavenger grounds and then keep his Scarab God coming back the next turn. So presumably he wants to be able to put a counter on Walking Ballista, but that isn't really doing much here. Remember, the Soulscar Mage was a recipient of Prowess Trigger from Chandra as well.
Yeah.
And I just think this one feels like it's really just slipped away from Brennan and DeCandio because he's unless that last card in his hand is, Vraska's Contempt or some type of removal spell.
Yep.
And here we see Ben Stark using Scavenger Grounds, and this is just a devastating blowout here.
Yep.
For DeCandio, and all he can do is put a counter on his guy. He draws Walk the Plank. I guess he could kill.
He has to kill the Glorybringer probably because he can't block it. But then
he did take damage that turn as well, right? He's not at 8, is he?
Yeah, he should be at 3, I believe. But he needs to kill Glorybringer right
now. That was a pretty sweet sequence from Ben. Just keeping that up and then using Chandra and then just replacing it with 2 loyalties, just whatever. This is a new Chandra in town. Using that again. Here's Walk the Plank on the Glorybringer.
Right, now.
Which would certainly just fly off of the plank or burn it to the ground. But
yeah, this is a temporary solution because there's two deserts in play. He can probably survive this turn if he blocks the Soulscar Mage and then empties it on the Rampaging Frostodon.
Well, that means he can no longer make that play.
Right.
Bomat Courier actually just presents lethal damage here because he can block, like you said, on the Soulscar Mage and then kill the Frostodon, take 1, and then die to Ramunap runes anyway.
Yep.
DeCandio's running the math here, but it does not pan out well for him, and I think we're going to see a win here by Ben Stark in a masterful performance there. Really fun to watch him work his way through that match, and the importance of Scavenger Grounds, right? Him threatening to leave it up, on that turn where he had the treasure and the treasure cove, saying, nope, not going to draw a card, I'm just going to leave this right here, and then just forcing the issue, just picking apart Brennan's board and saying you're not going to get value out of it, and ultimately convincing Brennan to let the Scarab God sit in the graveyard with all of those targets and get swept away with all the rest of them while Ben cleared away the board. Really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and Ben's build of the deck really came to the fore in that game because, he had more deserts in his deck. So it basically gave him more access to Scavenging Grounds.
It looks like we're back on our way here between Abigail Coulter and Corey Baumeister. The judge ruling... this is River's Rebuke, by the way.
We came at a good time because it looks like Corey is about to pick up all his non-land permanents.
Or both of them in this case.
Can't really make a Thopter in response because it will get swept up in the river.
Yeah, he is not dead here, though. 5, 7... He's only taking 8. I say that flippantly, but, he's not actually dead. Which is sometimes happens when your opponent casts River Rebuke. And he's even got a Harness Lightning in his hand here to take out a rogue refiner.
Right.
So he's going to take 5.
Yeah, no, Corey still seems like he's not so far behind that he can't recover here. And he can cast both creatures out of his hand. And actually he's rewarded by getting a few more extra energy this way.
Yeah, he did lose a couple of counters on the Bristling Hydra, but he'll live with that and still hanging on at a reasonable life total.
Yeah, actually the energy that he recovers is really, really important because it represents, obviously, Thopters. And Thopters are probably the best way to get through right now. I mean, Abigail does have the Walking Ballista, but she can only put 1 counter on a turn. I believe that Corey has... I'm trying to think if does he have 18 or... I don't know how much energy he has there. He has a 12-sided die and a 6-sided die, so I don't know.
Maybe like 11?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see either.
But he can possibly just make a bunch of Thopters and force Abigail to decide what she wants to do. There we go. So it looks like 16. Sorry, 11. 11. Not 16. 11 energy. So he can only make 3 Thopters. So probably hard to pressure there.
We've got a bit of a stalemate here. Both players at 9. And Corey's actually lining up an attack here with his 11 energy.
Right, so you can activate it 3 times. So Bristling Hydra could have a potential 6 toughness and 7 power.
Corey clearly not operating at peak efficiency.
Okay.
Abigail's going to put a counter on Walking Ballista and do it again.
Right. Doing it before blocks, just to see if Corey has any instants perhaps to interact so she doesn't have to
play that guessing game post blocks.
Right. So this is a really, really smart play. By putting the hostage taker there and no other creatures, she'll get the 2 damage on it, and then she can basically use the counters one at a time on the Bristling Hydra, forcing Corey to use 3 energy each time because she'll keep on responding to...
The downside for Abigail is that he can just do that.
Yes.
She can go do it, 3, do it, 3, do it, 3, and he's like, sure, I have a massive Bristling Hydra. Now, if he doesn't have any other sources of energy, though, that would leave him at only 2 and not enough to activate it again.
Oh, Blossoming Defense on the Walking Hydra.
This shows me, though, that maybe that wasn't her plan.
Oh.
Yeah, I liked your idea there, but if she was going to do that, she would have said, okay, I'm going to respond now.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Start making Corey use it. So it was actually just a full-on chump block there from Abigail. The hostage taker thrown under the bus, as it were. And I think Corey's fine with that transaction.
Oh, yeah, no, I definitely think so. Though Corey doesn't have any cards in hand, so he's going to be relying on this Whirl of Virtuoso really being able to hold the fort. And Walking Ballista lines up really well against all those Thopters.
And she's kind of just going off now with Walking Ballista, by the way. 5/5.
Yeah. Decides not to attack. I'm trying to... It's actually... There's a lot of complex interactions because there's so many individual activated abilities here. So she can't really take a hit from the Bristling Hydra. It's so dangerous too because it represents, 4 or 5 damage depending on how many energy that Corey chooses to use.
I mean, it could be 8.
Yeah.
And
and
if he has a Harness Lightning, she's dead or something. I think he's out of cards. But
right.
She's just going to chump block again.
And she's not going to try and ping it, which is fair enough here. Though right now she can actually make...
Yeah, she
7/7 Walking Ballista.
Yeah, it's tough because she has to decide between doing the ping thing, where she actually did have enough to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Or she needs to start just attacking him with this, I suppose. She is now up to 7/7.
Yeah,
But Corey just keeps on playing these energy creatures.
I think the thing is, Corey still attacks with Hydra next turn.
Yeah.
And then Abigail's forced to basically decide how many counters are going to go to Corey himself and the rest of the creatures. And the interesting part of it is that Corey can actually respond with using energy to make the Hydra bigger. So there's kind of this, the Hydra could get bigger, Ballista could get smaller. So it's actually quite interesting there.
There's a Vizier of Many Faces, and he's going to get another Bristling Hydra, and that's just yet another energy creature. Now he's up to 16.
Yeah, I think that might have been
Is
the
this
draw.
one just slipped away from Abigail here?
Yeah, I think so. I just don't.
And now she's compelled to block the Hydra.
I think she has to, because the Hydra represents actual lethal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. She finally... Yeah, this just looks like a rough spot here.
So Corey can activate Bristling Hydra 5 times if he chooses to, making that a 9/8. So he can make it essentially survive any ballista block. So she's probably going to just chump and then probably kill some of the other creatures, so save some life.
Assuming Corey... I mean, if this is just it, then she just says, okay, right?
Yeah, it's true.
And then just the Bristling Hydra were to just die, and she's like, all right, that's great. And she takes 4 and goes to 5, but now she's going to start playing the game here and force the issue.
Right.
But this does have a limit. So there's 2. This is a very weird little sequence, but it's the Bristling Hydra is scheduled to take its 3rd damage here.
Right.
So Corey's going to go ahead and put another one on the stack, and you can see he's been nice to us and put these ones. Those are +1/+1 counters that are pending. So now she can respond again. Down to 4. Ping it.
The first ping is going to get countered, so... I've never really seen this kind of interaction.
Yeah, this is just crazy. Corey's deciding, wait a second, if I just stop, what happens? But the answer is it doesn't end well for Corey, because he would actually just lose his Bristling Hydra just 3 pings.
Yeah, that's right.
And he still needs it to get into combat with the Walking Ballista at some point here. And then certainly the Ballista will die at this point if he can win this little fight.
Right.
Which does seem to benefit him. Like, if he just traded off, if he just said, how about I just rip up my Bristling Hydra and you do the same for your Ballista, he's fine with that.
Yeah,
He's
because he
getting
has
in for
another...
4 and,
he has another Hydra.
Exactly.
And it looks like Abigail doesn't really have anything else. She has 1 card in hand, decided she didn't want to play it last round, so I presume it wasn't very good.
But, I mean, this does not work out well for Corey, right? Like, he's just burning all of this energy. This is his last activation.
Yeah.
And then she can just go one more time, ping it, and then it'll die.
But Abigail is taking 4 damage, putting her at 5.
Yes, that is happening, but... I think the sequence doesn't end well for Corey, but the board state is such that it probably doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't she get to keep Walking Ballista if he doesn't... Like, if he burns this and then she does it one more time?
I think so.
Yeah. It's hard to say because, like, it's obviously... These are all invisible... like damage and all that kind of stuff. But the way I understand it would be. But I think the Bristling Hydra has 2 damage on it. Oh, it had 1. So she needed to use the last 2.
Right.
But at any rate, they ended up trading those off, but she takes 4 down to 5. And like you said, he has a relatively lethal board state here, and she needs to find something pretty special and immediately.
Yeah. Well, she does have something. Maybe this is a Whirl.
That is one of her best draws.
Yes. If she can actually draw Whirl... Oh, she doesn't have Whirl Virtuosa. But if she could draw... What could you draw here?
Just more creatures. I mean, just even another Rogue Refiner would be just fine. A Cub.
She has a Cub right here.
There you go.
Okay.
The Cub's good.
Yeah, no, she has 7 mana out.
But wait, there's more.
Softener.
She's going off.
Okay, so now she has 8 energy. The Cub could be 6/6. So it could actually block the Hydra. Corey has only 1 more energy, so... Oh, I spoke too soon.
Cancel that order.
Wow, that is definitely one of his best draws he could have there.
Absolutely. Gets him back up to 3 energy, puts out another threat. Now, any 2 things from Corey that hit win the game.
Yeah, and he can make a Thopter, and like he could advance the board if he wanted to by making a Thopter. Wow.
Oh, are you kidding me, Corey? You monster.
Those two sequence of draws, like really, other than maybe another Bristling Hydra, no, it's probably even better than that.
It has to be.
But
That's insane. Now he can just pass.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really, really hard for Abigail to push through. She really has to do the same. Now she has to draw a Rogue Refiner and then go off.
She's going to go down to 4 life here using the Glint Sleeve Siphoner.
Yeah, she definitely needs to get a draw, so that makes a lot of sense. 4 doesn't really make that much difference from 5. I mean, it is probably a Thopter hit, but I think the upside of getting an extra card is very important.
She's going to cycle Fetid Pools. Gotta
Needs a
find
redraw.
something.
I definitely think that she needs to draw another Rogue Refiner, just so she could get another draw and play something relevant. But those Thopters are going to get her, I think.
I guess another Walking Ballista?
That would be okay.
I mean, if she played like Corey, she would just go Whining Constrictor into Walking Ballista and be like, what now? But
Scarab God.
Oh, the Scarab God.
That is interesting. There's so
She
many.
actually does have a Whining Constrictor in her graveyard.
Yeah.
And a Hostage Taker.
Wow, that actually could be because Corey does not have lethal.
No.
As far as I can tell. Actually, maybe he has.
Oh, wait. He gets in for 2 automatically?
Yeah, 2.
1, 2, 3,
Yeah, no, he
4.
has lethal.
He does have lethal.
Unless there's.
He's got 1 additional creature, but she has 2 mana.
Yeah, I mean, if she has a removal spell, she can survive, and possibly even like Corey's basically just doing the theoretical blocks.
She can have Fatal Push.
Yeah, Fatal Push.
Does he want to play around it?
I mean, that's
Nope.
Nope.
He's just gonna get in there. Is this good enough for Corey Baumeister?
I like this aggression.
I do too. I mean, I think that his worst case scenario is not that bad, and Abigail has to extend the hand. Corey, it looks a little dumbfounded. That game got pretty complicated down the stretch, but at the end of the day, it was in fact Corey Baumeister. So he is going to keep on trucking here at Grand Prix Atlanta. We've got more Magic for you coming up right after these messages.